Welcome to the Victory Group podcast. I'm your host, Eli Jones, and this is the podcast that helps you conquer the giants that we all face in life. Just as David faced Goliath confidently, knowing God was on his side, you also can face your giants, knowing that you already hold the keys to victory. Today, I'm interviewing Odin Clack. Odin Clack is, I've got to admit it, he's family. This is my nephew, and I'm very, very proud of him. Class of '02 at Texas A&M University, a marketing graduate. And I am just so happy to have my nephew on this podcast. He's got an incredible story, just an incredible story, truly an overcomer. And today we're going to talk with Odin about some of the things that he's been working on. He is an entrepreneur and doing very, very well in Dallas. So we'll get to that story. But what we're doing here, Odin, is we're talking about adversities and overcoming adversities. And so far, we've had some terrific guests. They've had something major happen in their lives, and they've been able to bounce back and take that energy and use their faith and do something very, very special to help others. So, Odin, welcome to Victory Groove. We already have the victory. We just need to get our groove back.
Well, thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to a lively chat. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to share my stories.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, we talk a little bit about giants on this podcast. I just released a book, Run Toward Your Goliaths, that's now out there. So I encourage people to go out and look at Amazon, or you can go to my website at elijones.com. But we've been talking a lot about giants that we face, and we all do. I've certainly had my giants along the way, and I know you have too, Odin. So tell us, what's been your greatest giant so far?
You know, I would have to say that my greatest giant so far has been really my fears. I mean, there's giants every day. That's the giant I think probably we all face day to day, is this fear that keeps us from taking the next step, or a fear that keeps us from trying something new. And certainly, that is something I deal with, I've dealt with in the past, and I continue to deal with now, is, overcoming this feel that maybe I'm not good enough, or I don't have enough knowledge, or I don't have enough, whatever it is that would keep me from taking the next step. I mean, whether it be family, one point in time was marriage. You and I talked about that years ago.
Yeah.
Family, business, all those things are my giants. So
right. Yeah. Yet you continue. It's just been amazing to watch how you've been so impactful to so many lives. And you've been married now for how long, Odin? You and Rochelle?
14 years, I believe.
14 years. That's
14
amazing.
Years.
Yep. Both graduates of Mays Business School at Texas A&M in marketing too. So it's been incredible. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about your path from graduating from Texas A&M and then starting in marketing and up to being an entrepreneur? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I left Texas A&M in probably, I guess, May of 2003 is when I finally left Texas A&M. And the job market at the time was really poor, right? There wasn't a lot of stuff going on out there. All the job opportunities I had lined up had evaporated on me. And I ended up in a position where I had to, essentially, I just started working for myself. And that was, I think, one of the biggest, at the time, the fears change, right? Giants change over the course of your life.
Right.
Certainly mine had. At the time I graduated Texas A&M, I guess the biggest giant I was facing was the job market, right? There was nothing there. I had spent 3.5, 4 years trying to line up a job for after graduation. All of those evaporated on me, and I was left with this need to, okay, what's the next step? What's the next step for me? What's the next step for my family? I had a young lady I was dating who's now my wife, who I knew I wanted to marry at the time, but things weren't right yet. And so, that actually is how I got tossed into the entrepreneurial role. It wasn't because I decided I wanted to be a business owner. It was that I knew that I had to make money, and I wanted to make money. I wanted to be able to use whatever skills I had available to me and generate a paycheck. And luckily, that I did that. I was able to turn digital design and website design into a consulting career, and then a career in corporate America, where I've been working now for, I guess, almost 20 years now, whereas I've been working in the digital marketing space that entire time. That all started because of the work I was doing at Texas A&M, and this need for me to make sure all my bills are paid, if you will. That all started. That's when it all started. It really was. So,
Yeah.
and so from there at Texas A&M, I went back to Galveston for a little while, which is where I grew up in Galveston, Texas, and then ended up in Houston doing some consulting work, small business consulting work, whereas I work with a lot of mom and pop businesses to help them, kind of figure out their marketing strategy and their marketing program, especially with regards to social media and things like that. And I helped them with that. And then eventually I decided that that wasn't good enough in terms of professional development, that I needed to take a big step out there. And so I took a role with a consulting firm in the Dallas market. And that was really all about me overcoming this fear of what's next for me. It's all about me saying, hey, I do have to take a chance. I do have to leave home. I do have to leave what I believed at the time was some security. I had to leave it and go and chase after more professional development. And I found that in Dallas. And I've been in Dallas ever since.
Yeah. So when I think about your background, I'm thinking about the entrepreneurial side.
Yeah.
You gravitated to entrepreneurship, but did you have entrepreneurship in your background?
As I think, my first response was going to be no, it really didn't. But as I think about it, I actually think there was some level of entrepreneurship in my background with regards to my upbringing. My father, and I'm sure you can, who you knew and you can relate to. My father was a gentleman who grew up he was born in 1935. He grew up in the Depression age, guy. He believed in having a steady job. He believed in having, in his case, it was with the school district. He worked for the school district for 40 plus years as an administrator, but he always had other things he was doing.
Yeah. So
there was never,
I remember the credit union.
He started a credit union. He started a credit union in our home is where he started that. He sold, I have very fond memories of going with him to where he sold the tickets at the local football game, basketball game, and baseball game. If you went to a baseball game or any one of those sport games during that time, you were going to meet my father, Mr. Clack. He was the man who sold tickets. He was a banker. He started a credit union. He was an administrator with the school district. But he never was sitting still. He was always doing something.
Yeah.
If he was sitting still, it was because he was getting ready to go to bed. That's the only reason he was sitting still. And so while it was an entrepreneurship in the sense that he went and started a business, he went and started a service or something like that, he was always moving. He was always doing something productive. He was always finding a way to keep active, participate in the community, which is really what it was. And I do think that wore off of me. Now, I didn't realize at the time that I was going to be a quote unquote entrepreneur now. In many ways, I don't even see myself that way. I just see myself as a guy who is too stubborn to sit still. We could talk more about that because maybe sometimes I do need to sit still and I'm not. But I think I just picked up where he left off. Always be doing something. Always have something in the hopper. Always have some additional, revenue streams, if you want to call it that. But just never sit still. Never sit at home. If I'm watching a football game at home, it's because it's on in the background. If I'm watching baseball, it's on in the background. It's not because I'm actually sitting on the couch doing nothing. And at times that's actually a problem because I don't sit still very often. And we'll have to address that at some point in time. But right now it is, if you've got exercise, if you've got time to stay and you've got time to do something else. And so that's what I've been doing for the last, 20 years now.
I emphasize that throughout my book, Run Toward Your Goliaths. I talk a little bit about watching my dad, who was a serial entrepreneur, and he was never still. He was always doing something and had multiple revenue streams and those things. And I think in many ways, just watching our fathers go about their business, maybe not sitting us down necessarily and saying, hey, son, here's what I think you ought to do. More letting us be around them and watching them, observing them. I think that has a significant impact. And it sounds like that your dad did the same thing.
He definitely did.
Hang around. Yeah.
He definitely did. He wasn't the man that was going to take risks and start a new business per se and buy a store and run a store or something like that. But, I definitely get this from him. I, at times, am not willing to risk it all. I'm not at times willing to risk money and security, but I will risk my time. I will risk, my sweat. I will risk my effort. That I don't mind risking. I'll risk it all day long. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, no problem. That's how I manage things.
Yeah. Now, I know your mom too very well. Yep. I'm married to her sister. So, and she spent quite a bit of time with us, as you well know. And I know that just like your dad, she's a very strong woman of faith. And can we talk a little bit about how she kind of instilled faith in you and your sister as you were growing up?
Yeah, well, I was raised in a very balanced home. My dad was one way very conservative and just keep moving. My mother was definitely more along the lines of just go for it. Just go for it. You're brilliant. There's nothing you can't do. Just go for it. Give it a shot. Right.
Yeah,
Don't be
yeah.
fearful of these things. And so she always pushed us to go the next step. She always pushed us to go forward. And she definitely believed that God had our back. She believed that God had her back. And certainly her life story would support that, without a doubt. Certainly supports mine as well. But it was always God's got you. Have faith. You are good enough. You are able. You are capable. And even to this day, when I talk to her on the phone, I talk to her several times a week, obviously. She is still telling me that I can get it done.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is.
That's right.
You can do it. It's going to be fine. It's going to be brilliant. When I share with her that I am trying something new, like, well, we spoke earlier, I'm opening a brand new store, retail store, right? Which is a store that I'd never in my wildest imagination thought we'd be opening right now. I never thought I wanted to be in the retail business, but she was never the one to say, well, why would you do that? Are you sure you want to do that? It was, do it. You can do it. It's going to be great. Go for it. When I'm talking to her about overhead and I'm, things that business owners, share, when they're just processing their day and their next move, she's the one that says, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. My father, on the other hand, would have been the one that said, hey, be careful, tread lightly, make sure you have plan A, B, C, all the way through Z.
So he was always a planner. I remember that.
Always a plan. There had to be a plan. I am definitely like that.
Yeah.
But I was raised in a balanced household. I had a conservative approach on one hand and a more aggressive, faith-led approach on the other side, which was my mother for sure.
That's good. Yeah. Great balance. Great balance. Now, Odin, I know that you have a very special story that's come out most recently, and that was how you got into the leather goods business. Yeah. Just an amazing story. So now you've got 2 children, a son and a daughter. Tell us about your children.
Yeah, so I have an 11-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl. Just absolutely precious kids. My daughter is certainly a daddy's girl, and she always makes sure I'm taken care of. And they're 11 and 9, but to me, they're still just babies, and I absolutely love them. And you can tell I'm all about my kids, right? They're here with me all the time. I'm whatever I can do to support them. But my son probably more than my daughter at this moment. His way he came into this world, as well as the way he has connection to how I started this business. Is those stories that most people hear. My son was born on the same day my father passed away, and that was very unexpected. And I can tell you a quick story. I remember sitting in a movie theater getting a phone call from my mother saying that your father's sick. And she handed the phone to him, and he said, I'm going to be fine. Don't you come down here. Right. Because we were 5 hours away. He was in Galveston. I was in Dallas. And he said, don't you come down here. Now, the reason why he said that really had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with my wife, who he absolutely adored. He absolutely loved. And he knew that she was due to give birth to my son within days, within 2 days, I think it was, is where she was due. And so we were just waiting for her to go into labor. And he said, don't you come down here. You need to stay with your wife. And that's the kind of guy he was. He said, don't worry about me. Worry about, your wife, and worry about the kids. And of course, I didn't listen. I went down to Galveston. And then I finally left Galveston. My father wasn't doing well. I came back to Dallas because my wife was going into labor. And my son was born around, I'm going to say around noon, and my father passed away right around 1:30 or so. And that was a really tough time, for me. At the same time, this is where, in hindsight, you can see where God is good, right? Because my biggest fear in life at the time was my father passing away. I don't know if I've ever told anyone that. My biggest fear was being without my father for years. From high school, because I knew my father was older, I couldn't imagine doing anything without him. He was my best friend. He was the person I talked to and I shared everything with. Being without him was my biggest fear. However, and this is where God is good, is the day he passed away, my son was born. I had zero time to worry. I had very little time to be miserable. I had very little time to be fearful. I had very little time to be worried about what was going on outside of that little baby, my wife. Yeah. And that's exactly what he would have wanted of me, right? And it is hard to talk about now because I still don't talk about my dad very often, to be honest with you. Yeah. So, but I can share today that was only God.
Amen.
It was not in the form that I would have liked. I didn't want my father to pass away, but my son being born at the very same time is what helped me out tremendously. I had zero time. And no matter after he passed away, no matter what happened after that, it didn't really matter, to be honest with you. It didn't matter what happened after that. It didn't really matter what happened with family, business, job, whatever, because I only had one goal, which was to make sure that little baby was taken care of. Yeah. Nothing else mattered. And that's the way he would have wanted. My father would have wanted it. Mm-hmm. So that was God. So fast forward, not to leave that story too fast, but to fast forward another 2 years, my son was sick. He had pancreatitis, which is very, very unheard of for a 2-year-old baby to have pancreatitis. I mean, this kid would wake up in the middle of the night screaming, top of his lungs, and people called it night terrors or this, and they said, I'll grow it. But we had a notion to take him to the doctor. We walked to the doctor and we're talking to the doctor, and doctor's feeling his belly and she's doing her normal pediatric stuff with him. And she just said, well, I want you guys to get a sonogram real quick. Actually, we were getting ready to leave. We were getting ready to leave. She says, come back here one more time. I think I want to send you guys up to get a sonogram. And so we did that, and come to find out he had all his ducts in his, his intestines were all blocked. His pancreas was swollen up and things were backing up pretty badly. And he was in a lot of pain and he was not doing very well. And so we ended up being in a hospital for 2 weeks where this child could not eat. And he was just sitting there. There was no food. All he had was an IV. And this is a baby who absolutely loved to eat at the time. And it was tough. I'm pretty fresh in my career. Didn't really know what was going on. And, I'm sitting in this hospital with this baby and I have no clue what's going to happen next, and you got doctors coming in and out, they're sticking him with needles, and he's obviously, as a 2-year-old, he's not very happy with that. In fact, he was having a miserable time, and obviously it was because he was so sick. I don't think that we even realized just how sick he was. They get us out of the hospital that stay. A few months later, we're back in the hospital again for another 2-week stay with this child. His pancreas is swollen up. And now they're talking about they're going to have to do some surgery on him. They're going to have to go take his gallbladder out, put stents and all these other things in his intestine. And there's these doctors coming in wanting to grab him and take him away from us and bring him into these other rooms where we couldn't see what was going on. Doctors, we don't know these people. We don't, they're not family. They're not people that we, I guess we trust them, but at the same time, that's my son. That's our child. Oh, yeah. And they want us to hand this child over who's already scared and sick. They want us to hand him over to them, and they're going to walk away with him. That is the most heart-wrenching thing, to have to do. Was it for the best? Yes, it was for the best. But as a parent, very, very, very difficult to have to go through that. Yeah. No. My wife, I'm not one to give up. I don't care about sleeping. I will stay there, and I will stay there until everything is resolved. Whether it be 2 days, 3 days, 2 weeks, I will sit there. I'm not going anywhere. That's just how I am when it comes down to things like that. She finally convinced me to leave the hospital at one point in time. And she said, you just got to get away from here. You've got to do something different. There's nothing you can do at the moment. I'll call you when things are better, or I'll call you when there's a change. Just leave for a minute. Go home and go sleep. Well, I'm not going to sleep. Again, that's not going to happen. But what I did do, and what I've always enjoyed doing to clear my hair, is I go for a drive. I will drive around happily for an hour or so, or 2 hours, just to have a change of scenery and see things. On this particular drive, when I went to the hospital that day, I passed by a store, and the store had a large sign on the outside that said leather supplies or leather goods, something along those lines. And I decided to pull over, and I walked in the store. That's all that happened. And my goal only was to stop, stretch my legs, see what was inside that store. I could have walked in and quickly turned right back around and said, yep, saw what was inside. Now it's time for me to leave. In fact, what I saw when I walked inside was a wall full of these tools and rolls of leather and all these different things that I found interesting. I was like, man, that's interesting. I've never seen that stuff before. I wonder what that thing on the wall is. I wonder what that leather is. I wonder it was just a wonder. That's all it was. I was just curious.
Right.
And so I bought a few things. And I just said, I'm just going to try it out. I'm going to take some things home. I'm going to see if I can make myself a little laptop sleeve. I see these little things people around here have made. It's kind of cool. I'll do that. I'm burning gas. I'll just take this home and I'll play around with it. It'll clear my head, give me something to focus on while my kid's in the hospital, and I'll just play around with it. That was it. It was only an experiment, and it was only intended to clear my head. Mm-hmm. Well, I did something. Turned out okay. At the time, at least I thought it was okay. If I looked at it today, it would probably turn out pretty badly. And I did it again, did it again, because I was still clearing my head. My kid was still in the hospital. But I also I started to get this interest to say, why is my stuff not looking as good as the things I saw at that store? What's the difference between the people who made those items I saw at the store I thought were pretty cool and my items? Why is theirs better? I firmly believe there's no difference between any of us. I think we can all do it. The only difference is the interest you have and maybe your willingness to dedicate time to perfect or solve some problem, right? For me, I saw their stuff and say, hey, there's no difference between me and that guy or me and that gal. I can do the same quality work. And I did it again and again and again and again. I think I made that laptop sleeve 7 or 8 times. My kind wife told me that she thought it looked good. It did not. It absolutely did not. Right. So I appreciate her lying to me, but it did not look good. But I was on a path to just figure out, why is my work not as good as the next person's? And that has started now a 10-year, almost 9 or 10 year journey for me into making leather goods. It wasn't about building a business. It wasn't about being an entrepreneur. It wasn't about, certainly not about opening retail stores. It was about just trying to see if I could make something. Now, in hindsight, I was looking for a creative outlet. I was looking for a distraction. I was looking for a distraction from work. I was looking for a distraction from my kid being in the hospital. All those things are true. What I was not looking for was a business at the time, until I started realizing I was spending more money on things, and that money was coming out of the house account. We were a young couple at the time, so there wasn't a lot of disposable income just to throw around these new hobbies. So where I am again, problem, let's solve the problem. The best way to solve that problem is, well, I guess I could at least try to break even on this stuff. I'm going to sell a few pieces here and there, because people were certainly asking me if I'd make them things. And honestly, I didn't think I was good enough to make it for anybody, but eventually I got past that. I overcame that giant of not thinking my items were good enough. And I sold a few pieces, and eventually I started breaking even. I started to cover my expenses it was taking me to learn this new hobby, this new craft. Fast forward again another few months or another year or so, and now the direction of the funds are going a different direction, right? It's going a different way. Now there's more money coming into the account than there was money going out of the account.
Look at God.
Exactly. Look at God. Again, had no plans, was not my intent to grow this business. And I was at a beautiful corporate job, a job that I very much so enjoyed. But I found myself spending more and more time every day on this newfound craft and hobby. And one day occurred to me, you know what, maybe I actually do have something here. And I'll tell you exactly the day that it occurred to me that I had something different. And I still credit this gentleman with helping me. A photographer called me and says, hey, I'd like to come take some pictures of you. Something I normally would say, absolutely not. I don't want pictures of me. That's not really my thing. My wife, she liked pictures. I'm not the picture guy. But I said, sure. The gentleman's name was Steve. Sure, Steve, come on out and take pictures of me. Steve shows up, one guy, one camera. He has a few lights. He sets them up in my home garage, which in no way, shape, or form I thought was this, beautiful space. But he takes some pictures, shake hands. I say, oh, that's kind of cool. No problem. He walks away. A week later, he delivers these pictures to me, and the pictures were absolutely gorgeous. And so I credit Steve with showing me that there was another way to look at myself and look at my business, right? Because what he captured with his lens show even me a different way of looking at myself, a different way of looking at the business. I didn't think very much of myself, how it relates to this business. I didn't think very much of my goods, but to see how he envisioned me in the goods was life-changing. It really was. And I tell him this now. I said, you have no idea what you did as a photographer for the direction of my life and the direction of my business. I could only see myself and my problems and what was in front of me from one angle. You gave me a different angle to look at it, right?
That's amazing.
And not only was it just a talk, because obviously we like to share words of wisdom with people around us and tell them encouraging, but he was able to visually show me a different way of looking at myself in the business. And that is what really catapulted Odin Leather Goods to another level. I started to believe that, hey, maybe there is something more here there's something here more than what I pictured.
I love it.
It's all here. I knew it was here. I just couldn't see it. And so he gave me a different way. And so that is.
I got to say this. I got to say this, Odin. This is amazing. So in my book, I talk about be alert to people that God will send your way. These are kind of angels in a way. And it sounds like this photographer was one of those angels. I've had plenty of them in my life, and I've tracked that through the book, Run Toward Your Goliath. So I really appreciate that. Really appreciate that.
When I told him that, when I shared that with him, you can see the tears in his eyes, because he had his own craft that he is called to do, and it's doing photography. But to hear someone tell him how much of a life change
Mm-hmm.
his images, created, I
Mm-hmm.
think was interesting. And a lot of these things you don't see them when you're going through it. You don't
Right.
understand it. You don't recognize it. It's not until years later
Yeah.
that you realize just how impactful some of these moments were.
Oh, that's right. I saw something recently about you and your family, and I just love that. Just really love that. And it talks about how, you were really working on something to distract yourself for the most part. But look at God.
Oh,
Your son, little Edward, you ought to see him today, y'all. He is amazing. Both the kids are really amazing.
it
I know
really-
your daughter is in all kinds of beauty contests, and she's a beauty. There's no question about it. Little Edward, I saw in one of the shows that came out recently how you were talking to him about being part of the business. And I think it was something about, well, here's someone who may work for us one day. And
Yeah.
I really loved how little Edward handled that. He thinks like a businessman.
He does. He
Yeah,
really
yeah.
does. He really does.
Wow. Yeah.
Part of that same show is one of the questions, people ask. They assume that I have the interest in making my kids follow my footsteps in
Yeah.
leathercraft. Sure, that'd be nice. We're building a business here, and it'd be nice for them to participate. But people are always surprised. And the host of that show was very surprised when I said, "No, I don't care if my son
Mm-hmm.
carries this business on. That's not
Yeah.
my goal here.
Yeah.
What is my goal? What is the legacy I want to leave? Is him believing that he could if he
Mhm.
wanted to."
Mm.
And I think that is a very important thing. It's not about what business he creates in the future, what business my daughter creates in the future. It's about them believing they actually could.
That's
They could
right.
start from nothing. They could build something on their own,
That's
and they
right.
could take a passion or interest and turn it into a business.
That's
That's
legacy.
what I want to leave with them.
I love it, man. I
You know,
love that.
And
Amazing.
in that moment in that show, what you saw that happening. He was like, "Hey, well." Yeah, I think he even at one point in time says, "Well, I don't know if I want to do that, but I like the idea of knowing that I could." And he was
Mhm.
asking, and he does this all the time, "Hey, have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about selling this? Have you thought about moving this thing to that place over there because it may sell better?" He
Yeah.
processes the business very, very well.
Wow.
And with that in mind, I think we're successful in that sense.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's just incredible. So this is Odin Leather Goods. You have to check him out. So he started out online, all right, and now you've got 2 stores. You're opening your second store, right?
As we speak, yep.
Yeah. And where are the stores located?
So my first store is located, my first store is online. It's always open,
Yeah.
odinleathergoods.com. My second store is in the Colony, Texas, which is just north of downtown Dallas, near Frisco, Texas. We opened a store there on March 3rd, 2019, I guess it was, which
Going
was
right into COVID, right?
right in COVID. It was literally the week before Texas had all this major
Yeah.
shutdown. We opened on the 3rd. We had a party. We had a grand opening, which
Oh, we were there.
you were at.
Mhm. Oh,
That
yeah.
was on the 7th, and then by the 13th of the month, we were shut down,
Mhm.
and that was tough. And and I'll be honest, the biggest reason why it was tough is not because of the money. I had planned all that out, not COVID, but I had planned out that we were going to be fine no matter what, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm a planner. We already
Right.
established that. I have plan
yeah.
B, C, and D.
Mhm.
Fine, right? What was tough about that is the people we had just hired,
Mhm.
some of which who had left other jobs to come work for us, and having to tell them, "I'm sorry, you've got to go home. There's no place for you to work tomorrow." That was the toughest part about that.
Mhm.
And so, granted, all those people have come back. We opened up,
Good.
3, 4, 5 months later. I don't remember the exact time. And while it's not been, I'm not going to say that we have made up for that lost time, but certainly things are fine. Things are moving in the right direction. I'm still happy with the progress of that store.
Yeah.
To the point where now we're opening a second store here in Louisville, Texas. And this store again is, I tell people I have no clue what we're doing. We're not retail people. Marketing guy, I'm an online marketing guy. Physical retail stores is foreign to us, but we're going into it with faith.
That's
I got
it.
faith that this is going to work out just fine. I have faith that we have made the right decision. Yeah, I can be one that worries and has anxiety about certain things, and so when I've come in contact with opportunities where I don't have any anxiety, and I just say, "Yeah, sure, it'll be fine." I know it's the right thing to do.
That's
God's got us. I know that this is ordained in many ways, though I did not know it at the time. Yeah, we're in a good position.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I feel like this was a natural evolution of what Odin Leather Goods should be doing. And it's only because, we've been able to overcome our fears, because there were a lot of fears. Again, retail, I actually said no to the retail store at first because I was like, there's no way I need to be doing retail.
Mhm.
Going to find out we're actually doing pretty good with our retail
Yeah.
stores. Right?
Yeah.
So we overcome that fear now. This fear of increasing our overhead, increasing our exposure, because that's what's going on right now. We're increasing our exposure. Overcoming that fear is, we haven't opened up yet. We should be opening up in the next week or so. I won't say we've overcome it, but I feel really, really confident that we will overcome it, and it will be a non-issue in a few weeks.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. Odin, Odin, leather goods. Odin, Odin, leather goods. And I've gotten all kinds of things from Odin. I've gotten, one of the things I really like is I got a keychain from your store, and it has hustle on it. I love that one. I've gotten wallets, but the hustle. All right, that's good. And you've met Willie Nelson, haven't you?
I have on several occasions. I don't know if he would remember me, but it's funny. I met Willie Nelson many years ago with my sister and my dad when we were 6, 7 years old. But we have done some work for some really incredible partners. Willie Nelson and his Luck Reunion down there in Austin, Texas, has been one of our clients. We've had some really fantastic clients over the years. And honestly, not because of anything that I've done. I mean, we do great work. We do solid work. We're proud of the work that we're putting out here. But those big clients and those big notable names we've had a chance to work with, that's all just us staying where we need to be and in the grace of God. That's not been because of anything specific that I've done. It's been because God has graced us and God has blessed us with incredible opportunities. And I have faith that he's going to bring us more. I don't know what they will be, and I'm not really worried about what they're going to be, but I do try to stay in the right place at the right time for him to bless me when he sees fit.
Oh man, you are just an incredible role model, nephew. You really, really are. Watching you just face these giants one after another, and you kept growing, you kept building. And I praise God because he's on you, man. You just keep doing what you're doing. You're walking by faith, and that's apparent. You're walking by faith. You've got a great support system. Your family is strong. Your son is healthy. Your daughter's healthy. Your wife's healthy. God has blessed you. And we just pray that he continues to do so. So thank you so much for being part of this podcast, Victory Groove. And as we always say, absolutely. Yeah. We're going to track you. Odin Leather Goods. We're going to track that. Really proud of you. And remember, we have the victory. We just need to get our groove back. Join us next time for Victory Groove.